A colossal structure clings to a cliff face, built with a precision that should not exist for its era. This massive cliffside construction is an ancient mystery that directly challenges everything we think we know about early human technology. By the end of our journey, you will see the entire timeline of human history in a completely new light. How did its creators cut and move stones weighing hundreds of tons, and what forgotten purpose did this impossible fortress truly serve? What does it say about our own civilization that we are still struggling to understand theirs? The story begins not in a laboratory but in the field with a moment of stunned silence. An explorer pushing through a dense, untamed jungle stops at the edge of a deep ravine. Their gaze lifts following the line of the immense cliff face, and there it is, partially veiled by thick vines and the shadows of centuries. A structure of impossible scale emerges from the living rock. This is not a simple cave or a shallow carving. It is a fortress, a multi-leveled complex of terraces, chambers, and sheer walls, all built directly into and onto the vertical stone. The initial feeling is one of profound disorientation. The geometry is too perfect, the lines too straight for something supposedly shaped by nature or primitive tools. This moment of discovery, likely repeated by a handful of individuals over the years, marks the beginning of our modern confrontation with this ancient puzzle. The location itself, nestled in a remote and geologically dramatic landscape, was a place history had largely forgotten. The established narrative for this region spoke of simpler, earlier societies, cultures that mastered basic agriculture and local trade. They were not supposed to be capable of this. The visual shock of the construction, a stark, artificial silhouette imposed upon the raw, natural cliff, immediately signals that the textbook version of history is missing a crucial chapter. Whoever built this looked at a mountain and did not see an obstacle. They saw a foundation. The sheer walls of this ancient complex present us with our first great mystery. Look closely at a single stone block, one that weighs as much as a family car. Its surface is unnaturally smooth, its corners sharp and precise, but the real marvel is how it meets the stone beside it. The joint between them is so perfectly fitted that not even the thin blade of a razor can be forced into the seam. This is not an isolated example. It is the standard for the entire construction, a testament to a level of craftsmanship that defies easy explanation. The types of stone used only deepen the puzzle. We are not looking at soft, easily worked materials. These are hard, crystalline rocks, some with a hardness that would quickly wear down ordinary stone tools. To shape them with such geometric perfection would require something far more advanced than the simple copper chisels or stone hammers that mainstream history often attributes to this era. Modern expert masons and engineers who have visited the site have expressed open bafflement. They note that achieving such seamless, interlocking fits on such a massive scale is incredibly difficult even with our contemporary diamond-tipped saws and computer-guided machinery. It speaks to a profound, almost intuitive understanding of material science and geometry. How did they cut these stones so perfectly? How did they plan the complex, multi-angled joints so that every piece locked into its neighbor without a single miscalculation? This foundational question about their seemingly impossible craftsmanship forces us to reconsider the very toolbox of the ancient world. The mystery of how they built these walls leads directly to an even greater puzzle, the monumental task of getting them there in the first place. The challenge of how these stones were cut is dwarfed only by the question of how they were moved. These are not small rocks. Each block represents a mass of stone equivalent to a large truck or a shipping container, a weight that would strain modern machinery. Yet they were transported from quarries miles away, across landscapes of dense jungle, steep ravines, and unpredictable rivers. Think of the sheer physical effort required just to nudge one of these giants forward a single inch. The conventional explanations begin to fray under this immense weight. Using log rollers seems plausible until you calculate the pressure, which would have crushed any ordinary timber. Wooden sledges greased with water or mud might work on flat, hard ground, but navigating the uneven, often vertical, paths to the cliffside is a different matter entirely. Some have suggested river transport, but that only solves one leg of the journey, and hoisting a 100-ton block from a riverbank up to a cliff face presents its own set of nearly insurmountable obstacles. Each proposed method creates a cascade of new problems, demanding a level of infrastructure and resource management that, according to traditional history, should not have existed here. The puzzle deepens with the notable absence of evidence for the massive workforce or animal power such an endeavor would demand. There are no vast burial grounds indicating a large labor force, no artistic depictions of organized teams hauling stones, and no signs of the domesticated animals typically used for heavy pulling. This void in the archaeological record leads logistics experts to a startling conclusion. They note that moving objects of this scale requires more than just brute force. It demands sophisticated knowledge of physics, leverage, and soil mechanics. It requires the precision of a master engineer, not just the muscle of thousands. This forces a profound question. Could a simpler, more elegant technology, now lost to time, have been the true secret? A method that rendered these Herculean tasks manageable, perhaps even straightforward for the builders. This thought naturally draws our eyes upward, from the path the stones traveled to the dizzying height where they finally came to rest. The greatest challenge, however, lay in the vertical dimension. These multi-ton blocks were not merely placed on the ground, they were hoisted up the face of the cliff and locked into position at breathtaking heights. Imagine the task of lifting a block the size of a small room, not with a steel crane, but with ropes and human strength, and then maneuvering it with absolute precision onto a narrow stone ledge hundreds of feet in the air. The conventional toolkit of the ancient world seems woefully inadequate for such a task. Simple ramps made of earth and rubble would have needed to be of an immense, almost unimaginable scale to reach the highest terraces, requiring more material than the fortress itself. Pulley systems, while effective for lifting, become exponentially more dangerous and complex with such extreme weights. A single slipping rope or a frayed fiber could mean catastrophe. The structural stress on the cliff face itself had to be meticulously managed. Placing such concentrated weight on a vertical surface risks triggering rockfalls or collapses, a danger that modern engineers would analyze with sophisticated computer models. The builders, however, seem to possess an innate, almost supernatural understanding of load distribution and bedrock integrity. Their work has held fast for centuries, a silent rebuke to the idea that they were merely lucky. This points to a level of planning and foresight that goes far beyond simple trial and error. The sheer physical courage required of the workers is almost beyond comprehension. They performed this high-stakes, delicate work without harnesses, without hard hats, suspended above a fatal drop. Every lift, every placement was a dance with gravity where a single misstep had permanent consequences. This was not just construction, it was an act of profound faith and skill, and this unavoidable risk forces a pivotal question. Why choose such an impossibly difficult location? The immense effort and constant danger suggest that this was not a mere fortress for defense or a simple palace for a king. The elevation itself must have been the entire point. What drove them to build in the clouds, and what did they hope to see? or perhaps to be closer to, from such a great height? This very question of why they built so high leads us directly to the structure's ultimate purpose. What was this colossal complex actually for? The imposing walls and sheer cliffs suggest a fortress, an impenetrable stronghold designed to withstand any siege. And indeed, its position offers a staggering defensive advantage, with a clear view for miles and approaches that could be defended by a handful of people against an army. Yet, the architecture whispers of something more. Certain chambers are designed not for storage or barracks, but with precise acoustics and alignments that seem to channel sound and light in peculiar ways. Narrow conduits cut through the stone, not for water drainage, but perhaps for something far less tangible. These features point toward a ceremonial or religious function, a sacred space where rituals were performed high above the mundane world. Some researchers have noted that key sightlines from specific terraces align with the solstice sun or particularly bright stars, suggesting it may have served as a sophisticated astronomical observatory, a calendar carved in stone to mark the passage of seasons and time. So, was it a fortress, a temple, or an observatory? The frustrating and fascinating answer is that it appears to have been all of these at once. The evidence does not cleanly support just one explanation. A defensive wall might also symbolize a boundary between the earthly and the divine. A ceremonial chamber could double as a strategic command post. This multi-use, integrated design is perhaps the most modern aspect of the entire site, a place where practical needs and spiritual beliefs were not separate, but woven together into a single grand vision. The ambiguity is the point. It forces us to abandon our own segmented view of the world and consider that its creators possessed a unified worldview, one where science, spirituality, and security were inseparable. To truly grasp that worldview, we must finally ask the most difficult question of all. Who were these people? The very stones seem to guard the secret of their makers. No grand inscriptions announce the name of a king. No ceremonial carvings depict a founding dynasty. This profound silence is the core of the fifth mystery, the identity of the builders. To uncover them, we must sift through the known cultures of the region, comparing their established abilities with this architectural marvel. The most prominent local civilization left behind impressive ruins of their own, with sprawling cities and sophisticated water management. Yet, their known construction methods, while advanced, do not match the sheer audacity and precision of the cliffside work. Their stonework is masterful, but it is a mastery of a different kind, relying on mortar and more conventional block shapes. The cliff complex stands as an outlier, a project of a different magnitude and philosophy entirely. This has led some researchers to propose a far more radical idea. Perhaps this was not the work of a known culture at all, but of a civilization now lost to history, a society that achieved a brief, brilliant peak of technological and artistic genius before fading away, leaving only this single, breathtaking monument as their legacy. Another compelling theory suggests a collaboration. Could this have been a grand, unified project, drawing the finest stonemasons and engineers from multiple neighboring cultures, a temporary alliance of great minds for a shared, sacred purpose? This would explain the site's unique character, a fusion of ideas that does not fit neatly into any one archaeological box. When we look for stylistic parallels, the search widens across the globe. We see echoes of its seamless stonework in the cyclopean walls of other ancient sites, and a similar reverence for elevated, natural sanctuaries in cultures separated by vast oceans. Are these coincidences or faint traces of a shared, forgotten knowledge that once spanned the world? The absence of a name for the builders is more than a historical inconvenience. It directly challenges the linear timeline of human progress we have so carefully constructed. It suggests that advanced capabilities can arise, flourish in isolation, and then vanish, leaving barely a whisper in the conventional record. This single, anonymous site forces us to ask not just who built it, but what other chapters of human achievement have been completely erased by time. And if we cannot name the hands that shaped this place, can we at least pinpoint the moment in history when they performed their impossible work? The age of this stone giant is a battlefield of science and history. To pin a date on the silence, researchers have turned to every method at their disposal. Radiocarbon dating has been attempted on microscopic organic materials, perhaps ancient charcoal or plant fibers, trapped within the masonry. Meanwhile, geologists scrutinize the very stone itself, analyzing the patterns of weathering on the tool marks and the rate of lichen growth, searching for a clock written in the rock. The results, however, refuse to tell a single story. The conventional timeline, supported by some of these tests, places the construction firmly within the scope of a known regional civilization. This dating fits neatly into the established historical narrative, making it an impressive but explainable achievement of that culture. Yet other evidence violently disagrees. Certain geological assessments point to patterns of water erosion that would have required not centuries, but many thousands of years to form. Celestial alignments built into the walls, some researchers argue, would have been perfectly precise not for the sky of 2,000 years ago, but for a sky that existed in a much more distant, almost mythical past. This creates a stark divide. On one side, mainstream archaeologists hold to the younger date, backed by tangible carbon evidence. On the other, a growing chorus of geologists and independent researchers point to the stone itself, which seems to tell a far older story. The implications of this older date are staggering. If correct, it means this complex was not a product of a known, iron-working society, but was instead designed and erected in a prehistoric era, a time when human civilization was supposedly in its infancy, still mastering basic agriculture. This would not be a revision of history, it would be a rewrite of an entire chapter. The technological feats become exponentially more perplexing. How could a prehistoric people possess the engineering knowledge to execute such perfect stonework? The controversy over its birthday forces us to stop looking just at the stones and to start looking at the mind that arranged them. What specific, advanced knowledge of the world did the architect possess? The silent stones of this ancient fortress have withstood a force far more relentless than any invading army. For centuries, if not millennia, this region has been shaken by powerful earthquakes, yet the complex remains, clinging stubbornly to its cliff. This survival is not a matter of luck, it is a clear signature of engineering genius. The builders did not just construct a building, they designed it to dance with the earth itself. They possessed a sophisticated, almost intuitive grasp of seismic activity, crafting a structure with a built-in resilience that modern engineers can only admire. The evidence is written into the very fabric of the walls. Look again at those perfectly fitted, interlocking stone blocks. Their incredible precision was not just for show. This construction method creates a flexible lattice. When the ground shakes, the individual stones can shift and sway minutely against one another, absorbing and dispersing the tremendous energy of an earthquake. They move as a single, fluid unit instead of a rigid monolith, which would simply crack and collapse under the strain. This is a passive damping system of breathtaking elegance, using the weight and geometry of the stones themselves to ensure stability. The foundations tell a similar story. Rather than anchoring the structure directly into the most solid-looking bedrock, the builders seem to have incorporated layers of different materials, perhaps gravel or sand, beneath key sections. This acts as a shock absorber, a buffer that dissipates the violent waves of energy before they can travel up into the main walls. The overall shape of the complex, with its tapered bases and low center of gravity, further resists toppling. Every architectural choice contributes to a single, brilliant goal: survival in an unstable world. For modern seismic experts who visit the site, the experience is humbling. They recognize in these ancient walls the very principles that guide their own work today: the need to allow for movement and to channel destructive forces away from the core structure. The builders achieved this without computers, without sensors, without any of our advanced materials. Their knowledge could only have come from one source: deep, sustained observation of the natural world over countless generations. They learned to read the land, to understand its tremors, and to build in harmony with its rhythms, not in defiance of them. This profound environmental intelligence suggests a civilization that was not just technically skilled, but deeply wise. It forces us to wonder what other secrets of the earth they had mastered, and whether their greatest achievement was not the fortress itself, but the forgotten science that allowed it to endure. Beyond the stones and the sky, the builders also mastered the very flow of water itself. Woven throughout the complex is a hidden network of channels, drains, and reservoirs, all carved with surgical precision directly into the living rock. This was not a simple collection of gutters, but a sophisticated hydraulic system that demonstrates a masterful command of hydrology. The design reveals an intimate understanding of gravity, slope, and volume. Water was carefully collected from seeps in the cliff face and from rainfall, channeled through stone conduits that maintained a perfect, gentle gradient, and directed into deep, hidden cisterns for storage. The genius lies in the consistency. The water never flowed too fast to cause erosion, nor too slow to stagnate, a balance achieved through meticulous calculation. The engineering required to carve these intricate pathways without weakening the cliff structure is staggering. A single misjudged cut could have triggered a fracture, leading to a catastrophic collapse of the very rock they were building upon. This implies the builders possessed not just stoneworking skill, but a profound knowledge of geology, understanding the stress points and the flow of forces within the mountain itself. So, what was the purpose of this hidden water network? The answer, as with so much here, is layered. On a purely practical level, it provided a reliable source of fresh water for a large population, crucial for both drinking and sanitation, supporting the idea of a sustained, organized community living at this great height. Yet, the elegance of the system suggests a ceremonial dimension as well. The gentle sound of water flowing through specific channels could have been used to create a serene auditory atmosphere in ritual spaces, and certain basins may have been designed for acts of purification. Some researchers even point to the possibility of a passive cooling system, where air moving over these water channels would have been cooled and circulated, regulating the temperature within enclosed chambers. This utility-focused ingenuity points directly to the society behind it. Such a coordinated, large-scale investment in infrastructure speaks of a highly organized civilization with specialized labor, long-term planning, and a communal vision that prioritized both practical needs and spiritual harmony. The water system was the lifeblood of the complex, and its silent, enduring flow is a testament to a mind that thought in terms of centuries, not seasons. The geometry of this place is a language we are only beginning to decipher. Look beyond the stone itself to the empty spaces, the angles, and the sightlines. The entire complex appears to be laid out according to a hidden mathematical blueprint. Researchers have found that the ratios between the lengths of certain walls and the heights of specific chambers correspond to a very specific, irrational number, one celebrated for its aesthetic harmony. This proportion, often called the golden ratio, appears repeatedly in nature, from the spiral of a seashell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. Its presence here, meticulously encoded in stone, suggests the builders saw their work as an extension of a universal order, a physical echo of natural perfection. This is not random chance, it is a deliberate design principle that would not be formally documented by mathematicians for thousands of years. The precision extends to the angles formed by the terraces. Many of the corners are not simple 90-degree turns, but form perfect triangles whose side lengths adhere to the same timeless ratios found in Pythagorean triples. This is not the rough geometry of a carpenter, it is the exacting science of a master surveyor. The creation of such perfectly proportioned spaces on this colossal scale implies the use of advanced tools for measurement and alignment, tools that have left no trace in the archaeological record. The question is not just how they built it, but how they conceived of it. What kind of mind plans in such pure, abstract forms and then executes them on a mountainside? This mathematical genius, however, was not confined to the earth. It was directed toward the heavens. Specific corridors and window-like openings are not placed randomly. They are precisely oriented so that on the day of the summer solstice, a blade of sunlight pierces the darkness, illuminating a single, specific point on a far wall. On the winter solstice, the same opening frames the setting sun at a different, but equally precise marker. These are not vague alignments, they are repeatable, predictable events that require generations of patient, meticulous observation of the sky's cycles. The builders were tracking time itself, creating a stone calendar that marked the turning of the years with unerring accuracy. This celestial knowledge served a profound purpose. It would have dictated the timing of planting and harvest, governing the survival of the society below. It would also have anchored their spiritual life, connecting their rituals to the grand, predictable dance of the cosmos. Was this a form of worship, or was it a sophisticated scientific endeavor? For the builders, there may have been no distinction. The priest who charted the stars was also the scientist who understood the seasons. This fusion of intellect and belief is perhaps their most enduring legacy. It reveals a civilization that looked up at the night sky and saw not random points of light, but a complex, intelligible clockwork, and they built their greatest monument to be in sync with its every tick. The silent perfection of the stonework is matched only by the silence of the site itself. At any other construction project of this magnitude, we would expect to find a chaotic trail of evidence left behind by the workers. We should see quarries littered with broken tools, piles of stone chips, and discarded blocks that did not meet the exacting standards. Yet here, that evidence is conspicuously, almost unnervingly absent. The quarries, located miles away, are strangely clean. The sheer cliffs and terraces of the complex itself show no sprawling fields of rubble or manufacturing waste. It is as if the entire project was assembled with a quiet, surgical precision, leaving no mess behind. This profound cleanliness defies every known principle of large-scale stone construction. Even with modern diamond-tipped saws and industrial machinery, cutting and shaping hard stone generates a tremendous amount of dust and debris. The process is inherently messy. The absence of this inevitable byproduct here is a mystery that cuts as deep as the stone joints themselves. The surfaces of the finished blocks offer another clue, or rather, the lack of one. On many ancient monuments, we can find the distinctive marks left by pounding stone hammers or scoring copper chisels, a testament to the slow, laborious methods of the era. But on these walls, such tool marks are incredibly rare. The stone often appears smoothly finished, almost polished, as if it was shaped by a technology that worked the material without violently fracturing it. This void in the evidence has, understandably, given rise to more speculative theories. Could the builders have used a method based on intense, focused heat, softening the stone just enough to be molded or cut with minimal residue? Or perhaps they harnessed the power of sound, using specific resonant frequencies to make the massive stones temporarily weightless or to slice through rock with vibrational energy. While these ideas may sound like science fiction, they are born from a very real scientific puzzle. The conventional narrative of thousands of workers chiseling for decades simply does not account for the missing mountains of waste material and the unmarked surfaces. The site's eerie cleanliness forces us to confront a startling possibility. What if the builders possessed a method of construction so refined, so advanced, that it rendered the process itself nearly invisible? This missing chapter in their story directs our gaze away from the tools they might have used and toward the very substance they were manipulating. What secrets are still locked within the stone itself? The stone itself holds a secret, a geological fingerprint that reveals a journey of epic proportions. When researchers analyzed the minerals within the granite and basalt blocks, they found a startling mismatch. The chemical signature of these stones did not belong to the cliff they were built upon, or even to the surrounding valleys. They were sourced from quarries located dozens of miles away, across some of the most difficult terrain imaginable. This was not a matter of using whatever was close at hand. It was a deliberate, painstaking selection process. The builders passed over softer, more easily quarried local stone in favor of these incredibly hard, dense, crystalline rocks. Why would they choose the most difficult path? The answer lies in the material's inherent properties. This specific granite was chosen for its phenomenal durability, its ability to withstand millennia of weathering without crumbling. The basalt may have been selected for its unique workability under a specific, now forgotten technique, allowing it to be shaped with that signature smooth finish. Some researchers even suggest these stones were chosen for their acoustic qualities, their ability to resonate at certain frequencies, or for other subtle energetic properties that modern science is only beginning to understand. This was not random selection, it was a science. The builders possessed a profound, almost intuitive knowledge of petrology, the study of rocks. They understood that not all stone is created equal, and that for a project intended to last for the ages, only the finest materials would suffice. Transporting a single one of these multi-ton blocks from a distant quarry was a Herculean task, as we have seen. To do it repeatedly for hundreds of blocks signifies a purpose that transcended mere convenience. Every piece of non-local stone placed in that cliffside was a statement of intent. It tells us that the vision for this place was so precise, so uncompromising, that its creators were willing to move mountains, quite literally, to see it realized. The very materials they chose whisper of a grand design, one where every element from the largest wall to the smallest stone was imbued with a specific, meaningful role. These silent walls are not entirely blank. Etched into the stone, in sheltered corners and on prominent lintels, is a gallery of mysteries carved in rock. We find geometric patterns of such complexity they resemble sacred mandalas, interlocking spirals that seem to map a celestial dance, and stark, stylized figures of animals that do not match any known species from the region. One recurring motif shows a being with an elongated head and wide, staring eyes, holding an object that could be a tool or a symbolic scepter. There are no grand battle scenes, no processions of kings, no lists of conquests. The visual language here is entirely its own, a codex without a key. For the archaeologist, these carvings are a profound frustration. They do not align with the artistic traditions of any neighboring culture. The symbols are not hieroglyphs that can be sounded out, nor are they simple pictograms with obvious meanings. This forces a difficult admission. the builders may have possessed a completely unique belief system, one so distinct that its expressions are unrecognizable to us. Without a shared cultural reference, every interpretation becomes a reflection of the interpreter. An astronomer might look at a series of dots and circles and see a chart of star systems, noting how certain clusters correspond with constellations visible millennia ago. An engineer might examine the same pattern and see a schematic for a complex machine or a diagram of harmonic frequencies. A spiritual scholar might view the strange animal forms as representations of mythological creatures or symbols of spiritual states. The carvings become a Rorschach test etched in stone where each expert finds the echo of their own discipline. This very ambiguity, however, is a crucial piece of evidence. The absence of a decipherable narrative suggests a purpose that was either intensely personal or profoundly esoteric. Perhaps these symbols were not meant for public declaration, but for initiation, understood only by a select few who are trained in their meaning. They could be mnemonic devices for recalling vast amounts of oral history, or markers for specific celestial events that held ritual significance. The most haunting possibility is that they are a record, a deliberate message left for a future they knew would come, crafted in a language they hoped we would one day understand. We are left staring at these silent images, separated from their creators by an unbridgeable gap of time and thought. The stones can withstand earthquakes, but their art cannot withstand the slow erosion of memory. What profound stories about the nature of existence, the origin of humanity, or the structure of the cosmos are locked within these enigmatic lines? Until we learn to read this silent language, the true voice of the builders remains just out of reach. Step into the deepest chamber of the complex and speak in a normal tone. Your voice does not simply echo, it transforms. It seems to linger in the air, sustained and enriched by the space itself, creating a soft, harmonic resonance that slowly fades rather than sharply repeating. This is not a random acoustic effect. The entire structure appears to be a carefully tuned instrument, with its geometry and materials designed to conduct and manipulate sound in very specific ways. The smooth, hard surfaces of the granite walls reflect sound waves with incredible efficiency, while the precise angles and vaulted ceilings seem to focus these waves, amplifying certain frequencies and dampening others. Modern researchers have brought sensitive audio equipment into these spaces, confirming what visitors have felt for years. They have mapped standing waves and identified resonant frequencies that correspond to the natural harmonics of the Earth itself, a low, pervasive hum that would have been perceptible to the builders. The purpose of such an acoustic design is as layered as the structure itself. In a ritual context, the use of chanting, drumming, or specific tones within these chambers could have produced profound sensory experiences. The sustained resonance might have been used to induce altered states of consciousness, a tool for meditation or spiritual connection where the very air seemed to vibrate with energy. Some speculate this knowledge of sound extended to the practical. Could specific frequencies have been used in the construction process? There are accounts from various ancient traditions of sound being used to levitate or manipulate heavy objects, a concept that, while speculative, offers a potential explanation for the silent, waste-free construction we observe. The idea of using resonant vibration to make stone temporarily plastic or weightless would align with the site's eerie lack of tool marks and debris. This points to a technological paradigm entirely different from our own, one not based on levers and force, but on wave physics and harmonic integration. It suggests a civilization that did not seek to conquer nature with brute strength, but to collaborate with it using a deep understanding of the unseen forces that bind the world together. Their mastery of stone was matched by a mastery of silence and sound, using acoustics not for mere amplification, but as a fundamental tool for both building and being. If they could shape sound with such intention, what other invisible forces did they learn to harness? This single, silent fortress is not an isolated marvel. Its echoes can be heard across the globe, in the heart of the Peruvian Andes and the sands of Egypt. At Sacsayhuaman, a wall of colossal stones curves along a hillside, each block a unique, irregular polygon locked to its neighbors with that same breathtaking, razor-thin precision. Across the world, in the submerged halls of the Osirian, we find the same architectural signature, massive blocks of granite fitted together in a jigsaw puzzle of impossible weight and geometry. This style, known as polygonal masonry, appears on continents separated by vast oceans, a shared blueprint that defies the conventional timeline of human migration and contact. The parallels are too specific to dismiss as mere coincidence. In each location, the builders selected the hardest stones available, granite and basalt, ignoring softer, more convenient materials. They shaped these stones into complex, multi-angled forms that interlock in 3 dimensions, creating structures that have withstood millennia of earthquakes and erosion. The same focus on celestial alignment is present, with key walls and corridors oriented to solstice sunrises and significant star patterns. This is not just a similarity in appearance, it is a shared technological and philosophical framework. How could cultures, supposedly developing in complete isolation, arrive at the same incredibly sophisticated and non-intuitive solution for megalithic construction? The existence of these shared traits ignites a profound and controversial question. Could these sites be the scattered chapters of a single, lost story? The evidence suggests they may be the legacy of a common, advanced source of knowledge, a foundational civilization or a network of teacher explorers whose influence spanned the ancient world. This global context transforms our Cliffside mystery from a local enigma into a worldwide historical puzzle. When you see the same impossible walls built on different continents, you are no longer looking at separate cultures. You are looking at the faint, surviving fragments of a forgotten global chapter, a time when someone, somewhere, knew how to make stone behave like clay. The silent, tool-less perfection of the stonework leads us down a path of extraordinary speculation. When the evidence on the ground defies conventional explanation, we are forced to consider unconventional possibilities. What if the builders possessed a suite of technologies that were later lost to history, methods that rendered the impossible straightforward? One compelling theory suggests they used the chemistry of their environment. Certain plants in the region produce powerful acidic saps. Could the builders have learned to apply these natural compounds to the surface of the granite, temporarily softening the outer layer of the stone just enough to mold it or carve it with minimal effort? This would leave no hammer marks, only that characteristically smooth, almost vitrified finish. Another idea points to the power of light. By using massive, polished crystal lenses or concave mirrors, they might have been able to focus sunlight into a beam of intense heat, a literal laser from the ancient world capable of slicing through rock with clean, precise cuts. Perhaps their most profound secret was a mastery of vibration. We have already seen how the chambers are acoustically tuned. Could this knowledge have been applied to the stones themselves? If they could discover the resonant frequency of a specific granite block, applying that precise sound vibration might make the massive stone temporarily weightless or pliable, allowing small teams to maneuver it into place with an elegance that brute force could never achieve. These concepts may sound like they belong in a fantasy novel, yet they emerge from a very real scientific void. Mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical, and for good reason. There is no smoking gun, no ancient toolkit of lenses or vibration devices left behind. But the absence of conventional evidence is itself the catalyst for these theories. The site itself is the argument. Its very existence, with its missing debris and unmarked surfaces, challenges the linear timeline of human innovation we hold so dear. It suggests that progress is not a straight, ever upward line. Advanced knowledge can arise, flourish in a specific time and place, and then vanish, leaving only a silent, stone question mark for future generations to ponder. This forces a humbling realization. Our own civilization, for all its silicon and steel, might not be the first to unlock the deeper secrets of the material world. We may simply be the latest to rediscover them. The stars were not just lights in their sky, they were the master blueprint. This entire complex is a three-dimensional map of the heavens, engineered with a precision that stuns modern astronomers. Look at the long, narrow corridor that cuts deep into the heart of the structure. For 364 days of the year, this passage remains in near total darkness. But on the morning of the summer solstice, a brilliant spear of sunlight pierces the entire length of the corridor, striking a single polished stone disc set into the far wall. This is not a vague alignment. The angle of the corridor, the height of the opening, every dimension is calculated to the inch to capture that one specific beam of light on that one specific day. It is a celestial clock of breathtaking accuracy. Other openings target the winter solstice, marking the sun's lowest point in its annual journey, but the builder's vision extended beyond our sun. Certain niches and sightlines, when mapped, point directly to the rising positions of key stars like Sirius or the Pleiades, stars that would have signaled the changing of seasons or the timing of vital rainfall. The integration is so complete that you cannot separate the architecture from the astronomy. The walls themselves are a calendar, the windows are observatories, and the entire mountain becomes a monumental instrument for tracking time. This deep cosmic connection suggests a society that saw its own existence as inextricably linked to the cycles of the universe. Their daily lives, their agricultural cycles, their most sacred ceremonies, all were governed by the silent, predictable turn of the celestial sphere. To live here was to live in constant, conscious harmony with the cosmos. This celestial governance points toward a culture of profound thinkers, but such a sophisticated society would have required a powerful, centralized force to coordinate its creation. Who possessed the vision and the authority to command the very mountain to obey the stars? The story of this place does not end with its final stone being laid. A deeper look into the soil and the walls reveals a more complex history, one of silence and return. Archaeologists sifting through the layers have found evidence not of one continuous civilization, but of a series of distinct chapters. The original, pristine construction layer holds artifacts of a unique and sophisticated culture, tools and pottery that do not match any known style. Then there is a clear stratum of abandonment, a layer of wind-blown sediment and natural decay that settled over the complex for what seems like centuries. This long silence was eventually broken. A later people arrived, finding the empty, imposing structure and making it their own. Their artifacts are different, cruder in comparison, and they left their mark by building rough stone partitions inside the grand halls, subdividing the sacred spaces for their own practical needs. They even created new, simpler carvings over the original, enigmatic symbols, as if trying to overwrite a language they could no longer read. These later occupants clearly did not understand the original purpose of the celestial alignments or the acoustic chambers. They saw only a formidable fortress, a convenient shelter left behind by gods or giants, and they used it without comprehending the genius that surrounded them. This layering of history creates a profound confusion for modern researchers. How can we discern the original architect's vision when it is buried beneath the adaptations of those who came after, people who are merely squatters in a mystery? The legends of these later cultures only add to the enigma. They often speak of the site as a place built in a single night by a race of divine beings, or as a gateway to another world that had long since closed. These are the myths of a people trying to explain something far beyond their own technological grasp, attaching their own stories to a legacy they could not reclaim. This cycle of use, abandonment, and reinterpretation forces a haunting question. Why was such an advanced complex ever left behind? A place of such immense effort and profound knowledge represents a colossal investment. Its abandonment suggests a catastrophe or a decision of such magnitude that it reshaped an entire civilization. Was it a slow migration caused by a shifting climate that made the region unsustainable? Did a sudden conflict or a widespread health challenge force them to leave their masterpiece? Or did they simply achieve what they set out to do and move on, leaving their silent testament in the stone? The reason for their departure is a void as deep as the mystery of their construction, a final secret the stones refuse to tell. The whispers of the past are not always found in stone. They are carried on the breath of the living, in the stories told by the local peoples whose ancestors have lived in the shadow of this cliff for countless generations. Their oral histories and legends form a parallel history of the site, one written not in rock but in memory and myth. These are not simple tales, they are profound narratives that attempt to explain the inexplicable. One recurring legend speaks of a time when beings of light descended from the sky and shaped the mountain with instruments of sound, softening the stone with their songs until it flowed like water. Another tells of a race of giants, the Viracochas, who strode across the land in a primordial age, building great works in a single night before vanishing into the east. The builders are almost never described as ordinary humans. They are depicted as divine figures, as teachers from a distant world, or as a previous, more enlightened age of humanity. To dismiss these accounts as mere folklore is to ignore a vital piece of the puzzle. The persistence of these specific themes across different villages and storytellers suggests they are grappling with a shared, inherited memory of an event so far beyond their own technological understanding that the only framework they had was the supernatural. The stories encode a fundamental truth that archaeology alone cannot unearth. The site was not built by the people who came immediately after. There is a cultural memory of a rupture, of a lost golden age. The symbolic language of the legends often offers a startlingly accurate, if metaphorical, reflection of the site's physical mysteries. A myth about builders who used the voice of the earth to lift stones aligns curiously with the theories of acoustic levitation. A tale of shaping stone with concentrated sunlight echoes the speculative idea of advanced lens technology. These are not literal instructions, but they are symbolic interpretations of a technological reality that the storytellers could not otherwise describe. They represent an attempt to process and preserve the awe that the site has always inspired. Listening to these voices does not require a suspension of scientific disbelief. It requires understanding that human knowledge is preserved in many forms. The scientific method analyzes the stone, but the stories remember the wonder. They provide the essential human context, the emotional and spiritual impact that this impossible construction had on those who found it, empty and silent, and tried to understand the hands that made it. This rich tapestry of legend ensures that the mystery of the cliff is not just a question of how, but a lasting legend of who and why that continues to capture the human imagination. The silence of the stones is broken by the clamor of modern debate. In university halls and academic journals, a quiet war of words is waged over this single, enigmatic site. On one side stand the mainstream archaeologists who anchor their interpretation in the conventional timeline. They argue that while the construction is a masterpiece, it is not an anomaly. For them, it represents the pinnacle achievement of a known regional culture, a civilization that possessed more sophisticated engineering and a larger, more organized labor force than we previously credited. They point to radiocarbon dates from organic material found in the mortar as their strongest evidence, placing the construction squarely within the scope of recorded history. Their explanation for the precision is one of immense generational effort, thousands of workers using stone tools, trial and error, and a profound cultural will that drove them to achieve the seemingly impossible. This view keeps human history tidy, a continuous line of progress. Challenging this established narrative are the so-called fringe theorists, a diverse group of geologists, engineers, and independent researchers who see not a pinnacle, but a profound anomaly. They argue that the conventional explanation is a square peg forced into a round hole. For them, the stone itself tells a different story than the carbon dates. They highlight geological evidence of water erosion that suggests a far greater age, and they question whether the carbon-dated materials came from a later period of repair or occupation, not the original construction. Their central argument is one of technological necessity. The methods proposed by mainstream archaeology are simply insufficient to explain the evidence, or rather, the lack of it. The missing tool marks, the absent quarry debris, the seamless joins, all point toward a lost method, a forgotten science. This camp does not see a linear progression of history, but rather a series of peaks and valleys, with this site representing a lost peak of achievement. The battlefield of this debate is littered with specific points of contention. The interpretation of a perfectly carved channel might be a water drain to one researcher and a carefully calibrated resonance chamber to another. A niche facing the sunrise is either a convenient spot for a morning ritual or a precise astronomical marker for a solstice. Every feature is viewed through two entirely different lenses. The debate over cultural attribution is equally fierce. Was this the capital of a mighty local king, or was it a global sanctuary built by a collaboration of master masons from lost civilizations? The absence of any decipherable writing means that attribution relies entirely on stylistic comparisons and circumstantial evidence, a process that is inherently speculative. This ongoing conflict is not a sign of failure in the field of archaeology. It is the very engine of discovery. It forces everyone to look harder, to question their assumptions, and to admit the vast gaps in our understanding. The fact that no single theory can yet claim victory is what keeps the mystery vibrant and compelling, a puzzle that continues to challenge our deepest beliefs about the past and the capabilities of those who came before us. Later civilizations that inherited this land must have stood where we stand now, gazing up at the sheer walls with a mixture of awe and profound intimidation. How does a society build its own identity when the very landscape is dominated by the ghost of a far greater one? The architectural evidence suggests they tried to answer this question by imitation. In the valleys below, archaeologists have found the remains of later settlements, and their structures tell a telling story. They attempted to replicate the seamless stonework, but their walls are clumsy in comparison, using smaller, rougher stones packed with mud mortar. The ambition is visible, a clear echo of the master builders above, but the execution lacks the same impossible grace and precision. It is the difference between a child's drawing and a master's painting, both attempting to capture the same subject. This was not merely a practical choice of style, it was a form of reverence. The original builders were likely viewed not as historical figures, but as divine ancestors or a race of giants. This belief could have sparked local cults that venerated the site as a holy place, a point of contact with the sacred. The psychological weight of living perpetually in the shadow of such an achievement must have been immense. Every new temple or fortress they constructed was a silent, humbling comparison to the impossible work on the cliff. Their own creations, no matter how grand, would always be measured against an ideal they could not replicate. This enduring influence transformed the site from a physical place into a cultural anchor, a symbol of a lost golden age that shaped the artistic and spiritual ambitions of everyone who came after. The true legacy of the builders was not just in the stones they left behind, but in the unattainable standard they set, a challenge that would inspire and daunt generations for centuries to come. Every strategic location tells a story of priorities and peril. The choice of this cliff face was a deliberate act, a declaration carved into the landscape that speaks volumes about the society that made it. From a purely tactical standpoint, the site is a masterpiece of defensive planning. Its position offers a panoramic view for dozens of miles in every direction, making any approaching force visible long before it could become a threat. The steep, rugged approaches function as a natural moat, funneling any potential attackers into narrow, easily defensible paths where a small garrison could hold off an army. Control over the surrounding lands would have been absolute, with the inhabitants holding the high ground in both a literal and a strategic sense. But was it just about defense? The geography suggests another compelling reason. The complex sits astride what would have been a vital trade corridor, a natural pass through the mountains connecting fertile valleys rich in resources. From this vantage point, the builders could monitor and control the flow of goods, people, and information, taxing caravans and projecting their influence over a vast region without ever descending to the valley floor. This was not an isolated retreat, it was a command and control center of the highest order. Yet, the sheer difficulty of building here indicates that practical advantages were only part of the equation. A simpler, more accessible hilltop could have offered many of the same defensive and economic benefits without the monumental construction challenge. This implies that the location held a deeper, symbolic power. Building on such a grand, awe-inspiring natural feature was a statement of dominion, not just over other people, but over nature itself. It connected the society to the raw power of the earth and the sky, legitimizing their authority by aligning themselves with the most permanent forces in their world. The strategic rationale, therefore, was likely a fusion of the practical and the profound. It was about security, control, and also about crafting an enduring legend. The immense effort required to build here was the entire point, a demonstration of power and technological prowess so absolute that the location itself became a deterrent. The cliff was not just a place they built on, it was the central pillar of their identity, a silent sentinel whose strategic message we are still deciphering today. The fortress we see is only the beginning of the story. For every chamber and terrace exposed to the sun and wind, there could be a dozen more lying in complete darkness, hidden deep within the heart of the mountain. This is a pattern we have seen at other legendary ancient sites, where initial discoveries were merely the grand entrance to a much larger, subterranean world. The true scale of this construction may not be measured in its height, but in its depth. Modern explorers are now using ground-penetrating radar to scan the Earth around and beneath the visible structures. These scans do not use shovels or drills, they use pulses of energy to create a picture of what lies below, and the results are consistently intriguing. The data reveals distinct anomalies, large voids that do not align with natural cave systems, suggesting the presence of man-made chambers, sealed tunnels, or even multi-level complexes that have been closed off for centuries. The potential of these hidden spaces is staggering. One sealed corridor could lead to a repository, a kind of ancient library meant to preserve the builder's knowledge. Instead of paper or parchment, which would decay, they might have left their records inscribed on durable metal plates or carved into the walls of a protected hall, safe from the elements. This could be the key we need, the instruction manual that finally explains their methods and their purpose. Another chamber might serve as a memorial site, a resting place intended to honor the visionary leaders or master architects behind this monumental project. Finding such a place would offer profound insight into the people themselves, not just their engineering. The very existence of these potential voids transforms our understanding. It means that the incredible effort we can observe on the surface might represent just a fraction of the total labor. The builders were not just sculpting a cliff face, they were hollowing out a mountain, creating a hidden sanctuary as complex below the ground as it is above. This realization makes the entire site feel alive with possibility. Every sweep of the radar, every new technological survey, whispers the same tantalizing promise. The greatest discoveries at this ancient fortress are not yet behind us. They are waiting in the silence below, holding the secrets of a world we have only just begun to uncover. The very substance of the stone itself refuses to fit the narrative. When geologists take samples from these ancient walls and place them under powerful microscopes, they find a story written in the crystal structure that contradicts our historical timeline. The surface of the granite and basalt blocks does not show the expected chaotic fracturing from being pounded by stone hammers. Instead, in certain areas, the crystals appear to have been fused together, creating a smooth, almost glassy layer. This effect, known as vitrification, typically requires a brief, intense application of heat, enough to melt the very surface of the rock before it rapidly cools. Such a finish would be impossible to achieve with the slow, grinding action of primitive tools. It is a signature of something far more advanced. Further analysis reveals another troubling inconsistency. The tools officially attributed to the era, simple copper chisels and stone pounders, have a Mohs hardness that is significantly lower than the crystalline granite they were supposedly used to shape. In a straightforward test, the copper tool would wear down long before it made any meaningful impression on the rock. It is like trying to carve a diamond with a piece of chalk. The evidence points to a profound disconnect between the assumed methods and the physical reality of the materials. This has led materials scientists to a startling hypothesis. Could the builders have possessed a method to temporarily alter the stone's physical properties? Perhaps they applied a chemical compound derived from local plants, a substance that reacted with the minerals to make the surface temporarily softer and more malleable, allowing it to be shaped with relative ease before it re-hardened to its original, diamond-like state. Another theory suggests the use of directed thermal energy, a technology that could focus incredible heat onto a precise point, effectively slicing through the rock by turning it to molten glass for a fraction of a second. These are not wild guesses, they are scientific inferences drawn from the hard, physical evidence left behind. The anomalies in the stone's hardness and surface structure are not minor curiosities. They are a direct material challenge to our understanding, suggesting that the builders did not struggle against the stone, but instead commanded it, using a forgotten science that allowed them to work with impossible ease and precision. The stones themselves may hold a charge we cannot see. Beyond the celestial alignments and the seismic resilience, A more subtle theory suggests the builders were attuned to the very pulse of the planet. This perspective proposes the site was constructed at a precise nexus of telluric currents, natural streams of electromagnetic energy that flow deep within the Earth's crust like invisible rivers. Proponents of this idea point to dowsing studies, where individuals using simple rods have reported consistent, strong reactions along specific pathways within the complex, suggesting concentrated energy flows. More concretely, some scientific instruments have recorded subtle but persistent magnetic anomalies at the location, minor deviations in the local magnetic field that do not have an obvious geological explanation. The theory is that the ancient architects could sense these energies, much like some animals are believed to navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. Their choice of this specific cliff from all other possible locations may not have been random. It could have been the one place where these terrestrial forces were strongest. In this view, the entire structure is more than a fortress or a temple. It is a colossal geophysical instrument designed to harness, channel, or amplify these natural energies. The precise angles of the walls and the specific placement of chambers might have been calculated to interact with these unseen currents. What would this energy have been used for? Some speculate it could have amplified spiritual practices, creating an environment conducive to meditation or ceremonial activities by enhancing the natural electromagnetic field that influences human brainwaves. Others suggest a more practical application, perhaps using the harnessed energy in the construction process itself, or to power some long-lost technology. While mainstream science remains deeply skeptical, often classifying such ideas as pseudoscience, the persistence of this theory speaks to a deeper truth. It is an attempt to explain the profound, almost magnetic pull that these ancient sites exert on visitors, a feeling of awe and energy that is difficult to quantify but universally reported. This concept reframes the builders not just as master engineers, but as geo-shamans, individuals who saw the Earth as a living, energetic being, and who learned to build in sacred conversation with its hidden power. The sheer weight of these stones speaks of a society that could command mountains. To orchestrate a project of this scale, the civilization behind it must have possessed a social structure of immense complexity and power. We are not looking at the work of a scattered village or a tribal chieftain. This was an endeavor that would have consumed generations, demanding a level of organization that rivals the great public works of our own time. The first and most staggering requirement was manpower. Simply to cut, transport, and lift these blocks would have required a workforce numbering in the thousands, perhaps even the tens of thousands. But this was not a disorganized mob. It was a finely tuned machine of specialized roles. There would have been master surveyors who laid out the celestial alignments, engineers who calculated the structural stresses on the cliff face, and geologists who selected the perfect stone from distant quarries. Then came the quarrymen, the teams who expertly separated these multi-ton blocks from the living rock, the masons who shaped them with impossible precision, and the laborers who moved them across impossible distances. Each group relied on the skill of the others, a symphony of coordinated effort spanning decades. But how do you feed and house such an army? A workforce of that size cannot live off the land. It requires a vast, supporting infrastructure of farmers, herders, cooks, and water bearers, all working to sustain the human engine at the cliff face. This implies a centralized authority with the power to collect and redistribute resources on a massive scale, a form of ancient taxation that funneled grain, cloth, and tools to the construction site. So, what kind of leadership held this power? Was it a theocracy, ruled by priest-kings who claimed a divine mandate to build this gateway to the gods? Their word would have been law, their vision providing the spiritual fuel for generations of back-breaking labor. Or was it a militaristic state where discipline and order were enforced by a warrior class, organizing the population with the efficiency of an army on campaign? Yet another possibility is a more collaborative, almost utopian society, where a shared grand vision for a sacred calendar or a communal sanctuary inspired voluntary cooperation on a colossal scale. The very stability required for such a long-term project suggests a prosperous and peaceful civilization, one secure from constant conflict, with a surplus of food and a clear, unified purpose. This moves the mystery from a question of engineering to a question of human spirit. What shared belief, what collective dream was so powerful that it could compel an entire civilization to dedicate its greatest minds and strongest backs to a single, awe-inspiring task for over a century? The stones do not just show us how they built, they whisper of a society united by a purpose we can barely comprehend. The world these builders inhabited was a profoundly different place. Geological cores extracted from nearby lake beds and ancient soil layers reveal a climate that was far wetter and more lush than the region is today. Pollen samples, preserved like tiny time capsules, tell a story of dense forests dominated by hardwoods that could not survive the current, more arid conditions. This was not a landscape of sparse scrub and dusty plains, but a verdant, thriving ecosystem, rich with life and, crucially, water. This environmental context reshapes our understanding of their logistical choices. A wetter climate would have meant rivers ran higher and more consistently, potentially creating navigable waterways where none exist now. The colossal stones, quarried from dozens of miles away, could have been floated on barges for a significant portion of their journey, a method that would have been impossible in the drier era that followed. The very purpose of the site's sophisticated water channels becomes clearer, not just for ceremonial use, but for managing an abundance of rainfall and directing it into vast storage systems for a large population. But this lush world also held its own challenges. A warmer, wetter climate fosters rapid growth, not just of beneficial plants, but of dense, encroaching jungles that could have hidden rival groups or predatory animals. It suggests a society building not just against human enemies, but against the constant, reclaiming force of nature itself. The secure, elevated position offered a defensible space above the tangled, unpredictable forest floor. This environmental data also opens a window into the society's potential end. The geological record shows a dramatic shift. The layers of hardwood pollen suddenly give way to dust and the spores of hardy, drought-resistant grasses. The climate was changing, turning drier and less predictable. The rivers that may have once floated their stones began to shrink. The forests that provided timber and food retreated. A prolonged period of environmental hardship would have placed immense strain on the agricultural base that supported the massive workforce. Could a devastating drought or a series of crop failures have fractured the social order, forcing the population to abandon their mountain sanctuary in search of reliable water and fertile land? The stones they left behind are a monument not only to their genius, but to a lost world, a green and vibrant age that ultimately turned to dust, leaving their impossible fortress as a silent sentinel over a changed earth. A new, invisible force now tests the resilience of this ancient fortress, and it arrives not with earthquakes, but with footsteps. The modern era brings a paradox, as the global fascination that uncovers its secrets also threatens its very existence. The sheer volume of visitors, while a testament to human curiosity, places an immense strain on the delicate stonework. The constant friction of thousands of shoes each year wears down the very surfaces that have withstood millennia. The moisture from human breath and the oils from touching hands gradually degrade the pristine carvings and the impossibly smooth walls. Beyond the physical impact, the local ecosystem struggles with the byproducts of tourism, from waste management to the encroachment of infrastructure needed to support the crowds. The site's profound silence, once broken only by wind and wildlife, is now a chorus of voices, a sound for which it was never designed. This creates a monumental challenge for the guardians of this legacy, who must perform a delicate balancing act between public access and permanent preservation. How do you share a wonder with the world without loving it to death? The answer lies in a quiet, ongoing campaign of conservation that employs both space-age technology and timeless wisdom. Teams of experts use high-resolution, three-dimensional laser scanning to create a perfect digital twin of the entire complex, a record so precise it can monitor the subtlest shift of a single stone block over time. This virtual model allows conservators to plan interventions with surgical accuracy, understanding the structure's stresses without ever touching it. To combat the wear from visitors, they have established carefully managed pathways and viewing platforms that keep human traffic away from the most fragile areas. In some cases, they have even replicated specific carvings, placing the duplicates for public interaction, while the originals are sheltered from further harm. The fight against the elements is a constant one. Specialized, breathable sealants are applied to stone surfaces to shield them from acid rain and pollution without trapping destructive moisture within. Sophisticated drainage systems, inspired by the builder's own hidden hydraulics, are installed to manage modern water flow and prevent erosion at the foundation. The greatest conservation challenge, however, is rooted in the site's central mystery. We are trying to preserve a structure whose original construction methods we cannot fully replicate. How do you stabilize a wall when you do not know the secret of its perfect joints? How do you repair a chamber when you cannot fathom the acoustic principles that shaped it? Every conservation decision is made with profound humility, a recognition that we are caretakers of a technology we have not yet relearned. This responsibility transcends borders and generations, a shared duty to ensure that these silent questions carved in stone remain standing, waiting for the day when our understanding finally catches up to their ancient genius. The silent stones are now speaking a new language, the precise digital dialect of lasers and light. High above the ancient cliff, a small aircraft traces a meticulous grid pattern, its LiDAR scanner firing millions of invisible laser pulses at the ground below. Each pulse bounces back, creating a cloud of data points so dense it can penetrate the thickest jungle canopy to map the ground beneath. Back in laboratories, these points are woven together by powerful computers, forming a perfect three-dimensional replica of the entire site and its surrounding landscape. This is not a simple photograph, it is a living, breathing digital twin, a model so accurate it can measure the width of a stone joint to within a fraction of a millimeter. This technological leap allows researchers to perform virtual experiments that would be impossible or even dangerous to attempt on the physical structure. They can apply simulated earthquake forces to the digital walls, watching in real time as the interlocking stones shift and absorb the energy, revealing the genius of its seismic resilience in a way direct observation never could. They can strip away centuries of vegetation and soil with a click, revealing ancient pathways and water channels long since buried. The three-dimensional models also unlock the secret of celestial alignments with unprecedented certainty. By programming the exact positions of the sun, moon, and stars over thousands of years, researchers can watch as digital sunlight pierces the virtual corridors, confirming solstice alignments beyond any doubt, and sometimes revealing new ones that were invisible to the naked eye. This digital archaeology has even begun to suggest a possible sequence of construction, showing how the builders might have progressed from one terrace to the next, solving complex logistical puzzles as they climbed. For the public, this technology offers a different kind of magic. Through virtual reality, anyone, anywhere can now stand on the highest terrace, looking out over the virtual valley, hearing the whisper of the digital wind. This immersive experience is more than a tour. It fosters a profound, personal connection to a place they may never physically visit. The digital replica becomes a permanent record, a safeguard against the slow decay of time or the sudden shock of disaster, ensuring that even if the stones themselves should ever fall, their perfect image will endure for all future generations to study and to wonder at. This single, silent fortress forces a profound reconsideration of our entire human story. For generations, we have held a comfortable view of history as a steady climb, a linear march from primitive beginnings toward our current technological peak. We see ourselves at the summit of a long, unbroken ascent, but this cliffside complex does not fit on that timeline. It stands as a stark anomaly, a peak of achievement that appears not at the end of the climb, but seemingly in the middle of it, or perhaps even at the start of a journey we have forgotten. What if progress is not a straight line, but a great rolling wheel? What if civilizations, like seasons, have their springtimes of brilliant innovation, their summers of flourishing, and their autumns of gradual decline, eventually fading into a long winter of silence, only for the cycle to begin again elsewhere? This site suggests that advanced knowledge is not a permanent possession, but a flame that can be lit, burn brightly, and then be extinguished, leaving only embers for others to find. The idea of a lost cycle of civilizations, rising and falling over vast stretches of time, transforms our understanding of human potential. It challenges the very core of our modern arrogance. We assume that if something was not documented in a way we recognize, it did not happen. We trust the written record, but what if the greatest achievements were never written down? What if their knowledge was encoded in stone and song, in the very alignment of their buildings with the stars, a language we are only now beginning to perceive? This is not just about admitting we might be wrong about a single date or a building technique. It is about embracing a more humble and open-minded view of our ancestors. They were not primitive figures struggling toward the light. They may have been brilliant innovators who walked a different path, who solved problems with an elegance we have yet to rediscover. The existence of this place is a gift, a reminder that history is not a closed book but a living, breathing mystery, filled with surprises that continually rewrite the story of who we are and what we are capable of achieving. The stones themselves sing a silent hymn to beauty. While we have marveled at the engineering and the astronomy, we must not overlook the profound aesthetic vision that guided every cut and every angle. This was not merely a fortress or a temple, it was a monumental work of art. The builders demonstrated an innate understanding of visual harmony, crafting proportions that feel instinctively balanced and pleasing to the human eye. The ratio between the height of a wall and the width of a terrace, the spacing of doorways, the sweep of a grand staircase, all seem to follow a hidden geometric principle that resonates with a sense of natural order. It is the same principle found in the spirals of seashells and the branching of trees, a universal language of form that the builders translated into stone. This artistic intent is most vividly felt in the dance of light and shadow across the complex. As the sun travels its daily arc, the precise angles of the walls and terraces cast shifting patterns that transform the static stone into a dynamic canvas. Deep corridors plunge into dramatic darkness, while strategically placed openings allow sharp blades of light to pierce the gloom, illuminating specific carvings or alcoves at precise moments. This was a deliberate choreography of illumination, using the sun itself as a paintbrush to highlight the sacred and the significant throughout the day. The ultimate artistic statement, however, is the structure's breathtaking harmony with its environment. The builders did not seek to conquer the cliff, but to complement it. The curves of the walls echo the natural contours of the rock face. The different levels of the terraces follow the mountain's own ledges, making the construction appear as a natural extension of the landscape itself, as if the mountain had chosen to reveal this architecture from within. This seamless integration speaks of a deep reverence for the natural world, a desire to build in partnership with the earth, not in opposition to it. Why invest such immense effort in aesthetics when pure function would have sufficed? The answer lies in the human spirit's timeless drive to create meaning. The beauty of the place was functional in its own way. It inspired those who lived and worked there, elevating their daily existence. It communicated power and legitimacy to any who saw it from the valleys below. And most importantly, it was an investment in legacy. They were not just building for their own time, they were crafting a message for the future, a statement that they were a people of vision, of intellect, and of profound artistic soul. The enduring power of their creation lies not just in how it was built, but in how it makes us feel, a sense of awe that has survived the collapse of their name and the silencing of their voice. This ancient fortress is not a puzzle for one discipline alone, but a grand challenge for all of them. The mystery of its creation cannot be unlocked from within the walls of a single university department. The true breakthrough will likely arrive when the geologist, the engineer, the astronomer, and the climate scientist sit at the same table, sharing their fragments of the truth. Each holds a vital piece of the story that the others need to hear. The geologist who has studied the quarry stone can explain its unique properties to the engineer, who can then calculate the exact forces required to shape it. The astronomer who has charted the solstice alignments can share that data with the archaeologist, who may recognize a corresponding pattern in the artifact record. The climatologist, with their knowledge of the ancient, wetter world, can provide the environmental context that makes the choice of river transport suddenly plausible. When these isolated streams of knowledge converge, they form a river of understanding powerful enough to move the heaviest stones of this mystery. This is not merely a matter of efficiency, it is a necessity. An engineer, looking only at the stress tolerances of the stone, might design a ramp system that a geologist would immediately recognize as geologically unstable for that specific cliff face. An archaeologist, interpreting a carving as a battle standard, might miss the celestial map that an astronomer would see instantly. Our modern academic world, for all its virtues, often builds silos of deep but narrow expertise. This ancient site, in its beautiful complexity, demands that we tear those silos down. It calls for a new kind of explorer, one who is comfortable in the spaces between traditional fields. The final, coherent theory that explains the how, the why, and the who of this place will not be an archaeological theory or an engineering thesis. It will be a human story, woven from every strand of knowledge we can gather, a testament to the power of collaboration across the vast landscape of human curiosity. A new kind of pilgrim now walks these ancient terraces. The silent cliffs, once the domain of a forgotten elite, now echo with the voices of visitors from every corner of the globe. This influx of international attention is a double-edged sword, bringing both vital economic resources to the region and a set of profound new challenges. The phenomenon has been termed the tourist gaze, a way of seeing that transforms a sacred, complex place into a simple backdrop for a photograph, a checkmark on a travel bucket list. For many, the site's meaning becomes flattened, its deep history and spiritual significance reduced to a single, stunning image for social media. This modern perception actively reshapes the site's identity in the public imagination, often prioritizing the mystery and the spectacle over the nuanced cultural reality. A more delicate issue emerges from this global fascination, the line between shared wonder and cultural appropriation. As the site's fame grows, it attracts not only curious tourists but also those who project their own beliefs onto the silent stones. New Age spiritualists may arrive for ceremonies that have no connection to the local indigenous traditions, while proponents of fringe theories might loudly promote ideas of ancient astronauts that completely disregard the deep, continuous heritage of the people who have lived in the shadow of this cliff for generations. In these scenarios, the authentic cultural legacy of local populations is often overshadowed, their voices drowned out by louder, more sensational narratives that treat their ancestral home as a blank canvas for external fantasies. The central challenge, then, is one of balance. How do we open this wonder to the world, ensuring that tourism provides tangible benefits to local communities without turning a sacred landscape into a mere theme park? The goal is a form of stewardship where global interest fuels preservation efforts and local economies, while the meaning and dignity of the site for its cultural descendants are protected and centered. The modern life of this ancient place is no longer just an archaeological puzzle. It is a living, breathing story about the clash and fusion of global curiosity and local identity, a test of whether we can honor the past without drowning out the voices of its living heirs. The silent language of this ancient stone is now being spoken by architects in glass and steel. You can see its echo in buildings that seem to grow from the earth, structures that hug dramatic landscapes rather than flattening them. Modern designers grappling with the environmental impact of conventional construction are looking back to this cliffside complex as a masterclass in passive, resilient design. They see a building that uses the mountain's own mass for stability, that channels natural light and air with the precision of a crafted instrument, and that selects materials not for their novelty, but for their enduring conversation with the local environment. This is not mere imitation, it is a profound rediscovery of principles we once knew. The ancient understanding of thermal mass, where thick stone walls absorb daytime heat to release it slowly during cool nights, is being reapplied in modern green buildings to drastically reduce energy needs. The site's sophisticated water management, a network carved into the living rock, inspires contemporary systems for harvesting rainwater and managing stormwater through natural filtration rather than industrial pipes. The most powerful lesson lies in its longevity. In an age of disposable structures, the cliffside fortress stands as a testament to the value of building for centuries, not just for decades. It challenges the modern obsession with speed and cost, reminding us that true sustainability is measured not by the efficiency of construction, but by the enduring harmony between a structure and its home. The past is not a relic to be studied, but a living library of solutions to the very problems we face today. Even with all we have uncovered, the silent stones guard their deepest secrets. 3 monumental questions loom over this cliffside enigma, each one a pillar of the enduring mystery. First, the identity of the builders remains a ghost in the historical record. Without a name, a king, or a deciphered language, we are left staring at a masterpiece signed by a phantom. Second, the method of construction defies every conventional model. The seamless joints, the missing debris, the impossible lifts, all point toward a lost technological paradigm, a user manual for stone that has been misplaced by time. And third, the ultimate purpose of such a Herculean effort in this specific, dramatic location continues to challenge our understanding. Was it a fortress, a temple, an observatory, or a fusion of all three, serving a unified world we can no longer comprehend? These are not small gaps in our knowledge. They are chasms that separate us from the minds behind the mountain. The future of research here hinges on a few key breakthroughs. A definitive dating technique, one that can directly analyze the stone's own surface to determine when it was last worked, could finally resolve the fierce debate over its age and place it firmly on the human timeline. The discovery of a written record, perhaps hidden in a sealed chamber, would be the ultimate key, transforming the builders from anonymous artists into a people with a voice, a history, and a name. And the excavation of those tantalizing voids detected by ground-penetrating radar could reveal the hidden heart of the complex, offering not just answers, but entirely new categories of questions. The quest is far from over. Each passing year brings new technologies, from advanced satellite imagery to artificial intelligence that can analyze geological data in ways previously unimaginable. A new generation of researchers, unburdened by old assumptions, is looking at this puzzle with fresh eyes. The enduring enigma of the Cliffside construction ensures it will remain a beacon for curious minds, a place where history is not a settled fact but a living, breathing investigation. The greatest discovery may still be waiting, not in the stones we can see, but in the silence we have yet to penetrate. We have traveled through the labyrinth of mysteries surrounding this massive cliffside construction, from its impossibly precise stonework and logistical nightmares to its celestial alignments and lost technologies. This place is far more than an ancient ruin. It stands as a profound question mark etched into the very bedrock of human history, a silent challenge to our most fundamental assumptions about progress and the past. It reminds us that history is not a simple, linear story but a vast and complex tapestry, one that we are still learning how to read. The true purpose of this exploration is not to hand you a final answer, but to ignite that spark of curiosity within you. What theory resonates most deeply in your mind? Do you see the hand of a forgotten civilization, a collaboration of ancient masterminds, or a technology so elegant we have yet to rediscover it? The conversation does not end here. Share your own perspective in the comments below. Let us continue this journey of discovery together. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's greatest puzzles, consider subscribing for more voyages into the unknown. The ancient stones have spoken their timeless mystery. Now it is our turn to listen.